I am Jennifer Heinzman, President and CEO of the Berry County Chamber and Economic Development Alliance, and we want to thank you all for being here today to hear what all of the candidates that are seeking election to represent us have to say. We say that these positions exist to serve the people, businesses, and families in Berry County, and in many ways this is like a job interview. They are going to be working for us, so we want to make sure that they have our best interests represented. So as a community, we're not interested just in campaign slogans or talking points. We want to know about what you're going to do directly to benefit us here in Berry County. So that's what we're doing here today. To lead the conversation is going to be Greg Moore, our chair, and he is also with the Consumers Energy, not the Consumers Energy, he's with Consumers Energy, and he's going to be moderating this conversation, and I'm going to let him introduce all of the candidates. So with no further ado, Greg Moore.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 2026 Berry County Chamber and Economic Development Alliance Candidate Forum. As Jennifer said, my name is Greg Moore, and I will be your moderator today. We're hosting this event as a community service to allow you to meet and to better get to know those who seek to represent you in Lansing. We know that the policy decisions these folks make can have a significant impact, both positive and negative, on our homes, businesses, community organizations, schools, houses of worship, and our overall society. As citizens, we are charged with selecting those whom we believe will best represent our opinions, our values, and policy positions in Lansing. So forums like this provide an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates and are vital to helping us make the right choice. The format today will potentially feature 3 different rounds of questions. The first will be a number of core policy questions where each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. The second will be will feature 5 rapid-fire questions. Well, they will have just 50 seconds to respond. And then if we have time, and hopefully we will use the remaining time to ask questions from all of you. So hopefully you picked up a card out in the lobby and have submitted the questions to staff. And if not, if you'd like to do so, please flag down one of our staff and make sure you get a card. Submit that, they will be vetted, and then later on this afternoon they'll be presented to me to ask to the candidates. Because we're business and economic development organizations, most of the questions will encompass topics that are near and dear to the work that we're involved in across the county and the region. But your individual questions can basically be on any topic that you think is important. Please keep in mind the ground rules for today's forum. We want to maximize the opportunity to hear from our candidates. So please remain respectful and refrain from applause, cheering, or disruption during the candidate responses. As you can see, we have no signs, no chants, or demonstrations are permitted during the program. And likewise, candidates, please address issues respectfully and refrain from personal attacks, please. And finally, the obligatory disclaimers before we proceed to meet the candidates. This forum is hosted by the Berry County Chamber and Economic Development Alliance as a nonpartisan effort to promote civic engagement and informed decision-making. The organization does not advocate for, endorse, or oppose any candidate, political party, or position. All candidates are provided with equal opportunity to participate. Also, please note that this forum is being recorded. So now let's meet the candidates. You all have their bios in the packet that you picked up at the table when you came in, so I won't bother repeating those. And we very much appreciate all of you taking time to participate in this forum. So let's get started. We'll call the first name. We'll start right here at this end. Starting with the 18th Senate District, which includes all of Berry County, as well as portions of Allegan, Calhoun, Kalamazoo, Kent, and Iowa counties. So it makes for a lot of driving. First up is the incumbent Republican Thomas Eller. Thomas. Next, we have Democrat candidate Anthony Pennock. Next, we'll move to the 43rd House District, which includes Berry, Yankee Springs, Orangeville, Hope, Prairieville, Johnstown, and Assyria townships, as well as portions of Allegan, Eden, and Ottawa counties. First up, we have Swank, Democrat candidate. invited but was unable to attend this afternoon. And moving on to the 78th House District, which includes Carlton, Woodland, Castleton, Hastings, Baltimore, and Maple Grove Townships, and the city of Hastings, along with portions of Eaton, Ionia, and Kent County. This is an open seat, which doesn't occur all that often. So let's meet our candidates. First up, we have Terry Frewen, Republican candidate. Next, we have Republican, yes, Republican. Caleb Hudson, also Republican candidate. Next up, Brandon Strong, Republican candidate. And Miguel Pilar, Republican candidate. Rachel Gross, the Democrat candidate for the 78th District, was invited but also was not able to attend this afternoon. Moving to the 79th House District, which includes Thornapple, Irving, and Rutland Townships, and portions of Allegan and Kent counties. First up is the incumbent representative, Angela Regas, Republican.
Felt like I was back in gym school or gym class there for a second.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see, Zach Abbott was invited and had planned to attend, but at the last minute was not able to. So let's give a round of applause to our candidates. All right, so let's get to our first round of questions. And as a reminder, each of you will have 90 seconds to answer. If you need me to repeat the question, certainly will do so. Just ask. And the timing is going to be handled by the two folks down here in the front. You're going to start off with the green. When you see yellow, that means you have 30 seconds left. Clock is ticking, and when you see red, you're done. Cut it off. You are done with this round. All right. So, timekeepers start to watch. And our first question for Senator Albert. Do you support expanding access to career and technical education, CTE, dual enrollment, and work-based learning opportunities in rural counties? What specific actions would you take at the state level to improve access to CTE expansion and deployment?
Thank you for the question. I'll start with, you guys actually, can you hear me okay? Okay, I can't hear out there. But yeah, absolutely support it. The last 2 years in the Senate for the budget, I have put forward a proposal. It's a $150 million proposal, half of which would be for CTE startup grants at our local districts, and the other half would be to increase the Section 61A, which is the CTE education program line item. Essentially what that line item does is it helps reimburse local districts for the additional costs that it takes to run CTE programs. So it reimburses those additional costs, roughly about 50%. It depends on the type of CTE program. So what my proposal would do would be to increase that to 90% for several years and then ramp it down to the status quo 50% on average. The goal of that is to help these local school districts that really have a challenge getting over that first hurdle of setting up CTE programs. When I look across the entire 18th district, we have ISD programs in every county. Every ISD has one except Berry. You have Kent, Allegan, Calhoun, Kalamazoo, and Ionia. They all have centralized ISD programs. But they also have a local component, most of which, I think all of them, has a local village that helps supplement the CTE program. So, looks like I'm not ready. So, thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you to the Chamber for allowing us to be here today and for all of you for showing up. As a veteran public school teacher, having taught alternative high school for the last 6 years, as well as being the product of CTE programming in Calhoun County, CTE programming is absolutely vital. But there's a few things we need to do to actually make it work. The first thing is we need more flexibility within the Michigan Merit curriculum to allow for personalized curriculum for our students to replace advanced CTE credits for maybe Algebra 2 or foreign language credits. That would allow us to open the door to allow students to earn those certifications while they're still in high school. The next thing we need to do is really focus on the transportation barrier that exists. So what we need is we need the specific ISD transportation funding to support students to be able to get to these job sites so they can actually take part in these CTE programs. And finally, we need to streamline vocational training program certification and allow retired individuals from industry experts as well as part-timers to be able to get that certification from the state to be able to teach these classes. Those are the starting points that we need to fix the CTE and advance them within Berry County.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Alan Swank, and I'm a huge proponent for vocational education. I've been teaching vocational education off and on since 2005, I think it is, and currently do teach in a vocational education program, as well as traditional education. Dual enrollment programs, I teach that as well, so I'm very familiar with the needs in Hastings for a new vocational education institute located preferably on the Pheasantfeld Center right here in Hastings. They have a large campus and room to grow, and I'd really like to see them be able to get that, and would work diligently to support that initiative. The students are great. I mean, dual enrollment program is just absolutely wonderful. I get these students in from all different walks of life and all different school ages, and they're just wonderful students, but also the community has rallied around, right here in Hastings, the program I teach in, they received an $80,000 grant from the Brown Institute for the Kellogg Advanced Manufacturing and Assembly program. I'm really proud to be associated with these types of programs and to work with the students. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Frewen. I'm a resident of Portland, and I'm running for 78 House District. So to answer the question, yes, I do plan on promoting CTE, career technical education, dual enrollment, apprenticeships. This really is close to my heart. When I was in high school back in the 80s, we had career training. I was in building trades for 2 years. It took me into a career of construction management after high school and after college. My wife also was a part of the Heartlands program in Ionia in dental assisting, and that she has been doing that for 32 years. Both of my children attended the Heartlands program for diesel technology, and both have gone on in careers in diesel technology and the other one in aviation. So it's very important to those students that don't want to go to college, and I feel it also helps prepare those that do want to go to college to have that hands-on learning and get that. So, you know, as far as funding the programs, absolutely. I also think that our community colleges need to have more outreach than just their jurisdiction when it comes to technical education. Montcalm County has a technical career program, and they will allow Ionia County now to be a part of that. So I would really like to have the state give those expanding outside of the community colleges to our rural communities.
My name is Caleb Hudson. I'm running for the 78th district as well. And I would also like to say thank you for inviting all of us here today. So CTE programs are a great program within our public school system. Growing up, I actually got to do a lot of the CTEs, whether it was drywall, for example, painting, plumbing, electrical, or even welding. And that was a great experience. I'm in very big support of these programs because when I was in high school, actually, so I can connect with Terry on this one, I got to build a house through Kentwood, through East Kentwood, and that was a great opportunity being able to do that. Within our rural district, we need to be able to make sure that these rural schools, and being a resident of Hastings, we need to make sure that they have the same opportunity as what Grand Rapids has, or even Lansing. And one of the biggest things as well is we need to stop cramming a 4-year degree down these students' throats. It is not required to have a 4-year degree to be successful. We have apprenticeships throughout this entire country as well as state that are making people just as successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan Strong, candidate for 70th District. I would say we need to stop letting geography pick winners and losers at this point, and I think that that's been a big issue that we've seen locally. Rural communities have a higher percentage of blue-collar workers than urban communities, and how we support those workers, not just when it comes to CTE. We also need to train our 35-year-olds and our 40-year-olds that can advance in the company, and I think we've ignored that for far too long. I think we're very blessed in Berry County in that the opportunity is there. The reality is how do we implement that? I don't know if everybody knows, Berry County only has 2 schools in our ISD, and it's crucial that we look at that and the cost prohibitiveness for us and what can the state do. Senator Albert made a great point. How can we invest on the front end and then slowly pull back that support down the road? On the flip side, when it comes to dual enrollment, we're also very blessed because we have the Face and Felt Center here. I've been in education for over 20 years, the last 12 of which have been at Berry County Christian, where we sent a number of students out to Face and Felt. My own children have taken advantage of the program there, and it's been a benefit for Berry County, specifically the city of Hastings, and I think that we could continue to do a lot more and get more help from the state and stop picking winners and losers just based on geography, because it's the people out here in rural Michigan that are suffering.
Hi everyone, my name is Miguel Pilar. I am also running to become the next state representative for Michigan's 78th House District. I am full in support of CTE, dual enrollment and apprenticeship opportunities. I was able to attend Lakewood High School and actually take dual enrollment through that. We need to give every student the ability to succeed, no matter if you go to college or not, and go directly into the workforce. So I would fully support these programs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Perfect. I'm Angela Regas, State Representative. I'm actually running for my 3rd term in the House of Representatives for the 79th District, which in Berry County that encompasses Rutland, Irving, and Thornapple Townships. I appreciate the question, and as a graduate of Hastings High School in 1993, I would agree that Berry County needs a Career Technical Institute. We have students going to Kent, we have students going all over neighboring counties, and like a candidate down the line mentioned earlier, obviously transportation is more of an issue when a student has to bus out of the county. I support the Going Pro program. I've also co-sponsored House Bill 4692 and 5207, which reduces license barriers. I believe that especially here in Berry County, we need to increase funding, expand apprenticeships, get certification during high school, like the dual enrollment. Let's build up our local talent pipeline. The Vocation Institute would be a huge win for this county. When you look at Berry County as a whole, it is a manufacturing hub. We've got some of the best manufacturers in the state right here in Berry County. We need to partner with that industry to help grow those students right out of high school so they can choose the career path they wish. If it's not a 4-year program, trades, anything, they should be able to have open doors for them despite living in Berry County. Living in Berry County, which is, I would say, one of the best counties in the state, should not hinder someone's student success. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't look at the red sheet there. I apologize.
Very good. Thank you all. We will now start with Mr. McKenna with our second question. We're hearing a lot at the state, local, and federal level about the challenges around housing availability and affordability. Just last week, the National Association of Home Builders released a study showing that Federal, state, and local regulations combined add astonishing $131,734 to the price of a single-family home. What ideas do you have for addressing these challenges, especially in rural counties like Erie?
Well, I know that I have a lot of family here in Berry County, many rent because they can't afford to own. And that's the problem, that's the reality right now, is whether it's a new build or a retrofit or a family home, somebody moved out, somebody else is moving in, it's not feasible for people to buy homes right now. They can't afford it. So I understand that most of this is actually an absolute inventory kind of problem. So I feel what we need is we need to expand local housing trust funds, back with matching state dollars, of course, to help rural communities level the playing field and allow people to actually buy homes. And with that, I feel we also need to work with developers to make sure that they can also get some matching funds to reduce the cost of retrofit homes and new builds, because they need to stay up to code, obviously, that needs to happen. But we also need to fast track some new builds, right? We need to fast track a lot of dwellings and accessory dwelling units and duplexes while keeping local control intact. So there's a lot of things the state needs to work on, from zoning permits to fast tracking the ability to get building codes, or to get things built, but also reducing the costs for the developers so that the home prices aren't skyrocketing. And that is how we can actually reduce the costs. We need more supply because right now the demand is too high.
Okay, I've been an almost lifelong resident of Berry County. I understand the shortages, it's been that way forever, and trying to find some place to rent. A lot of it I'm seeing is due to regulations. We've kind of overburdened ourselves with some of the zoning regulations. Used to be you could buy a small piece of property, you could put a small manufactured home on it without a problem. But then they came along with the centralized zoning, and they said, oh, 3 acres minimum before you put a house on it. It has to be like 850 feet. So it immediately jumps into the double wide range. And so it kind of, all of a sudden we're out pricing the lower portion of the population that can't afford this. Now I've heard the arguments, well, I don't want you to put a mobile home right next to my $500,000 house. Okay, I can understand that. But we need to downsize how much land is required for a house from minimum 3 acres for a build down to where we can actually have PUDs, planned urban developments, with maybe 50 square foot lots on up from there, so people can put in a small house in there and be able to afford to live. So that's what I'm worried about. Have we actually gone ahead and created so many laws and regulations and fees that people can no longer afford to purchase property? Thank you.
So, as a realtor for over 30 years, and also a licensed builder since 1989, I've seen firsthand how the housing shortages are affecting the families in the economic growth. You know, we need more housing supply at all price points. So, in regards to streamlining the process of zoning, permitting, making more common sense building codes, that's something that needs to be done at the state level. Also, we need to re-encourage development on the underutilized properties. You know, the old schools that are vacant, the old churches that are vacant. We need to convert our zoning to make that into residential usage. You know, the local control is what it's all about. There are some House bills out there to decrease zoning size of the lots, very small, and the same with the housing. There's a place for all of that. So I think that needs to be worked on. I'd be surprised if any of those housing bills get passed. I think a few might, but I'm looking forward to working on those within the next year or two when I'm on as your representative. The two things that are causing the lack of inventory, the the pop-up tax, which I have a plan on my website, terryfrewen.com, to slow that pop-up tax down without hurting the municipalities. And the other one is interest rates, which we don't have control of, that's on the federal level. So supply and demand is what's driving the prices up right now. The supply is low, demand is high.
One thing about the housing crisis is it's very current. I bought my house 3 years ago right here in the city of Hastings, where I had to work 80 hours per week to be able to afford my down payment. I'm now 24 years old and I'm very thankful for that to be able to buy my house. One thing about buying a house, whether it's building or buying one that was already built, is the zoning regulations that come in especially. With that being said, that needs to stay at the local level and it doesn't need to be enhanced in the state. We're here to give the power back to the people as well as to local government and not take it away. With adding sewage, for example, electricity, or any other type of plumbing, it adds the cost to build. And that's where we have bills written and ready to go for when I get elected that will reduce the cost to make sure that doing all these hookups, whether it's sewage, water, electrical, or even gas, it does not add to the prices. One of the biggest problems with our housing crisis that we have with the rural development is the rising costs. And we now have to find a way to keep cutting the costs instead of finding more regulations to keep adding on. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that there's a couple of issues at play, maybe here locally in Berry County. One is I think we've addressed two housing issues that were very important. One would be our seniors. There's been some pretty massive expansions out at Thornapple Manor. Second, we've had some pretty large apartment projects that have been put in place, and I think all of those are good things. The next step that we need to do is make sure that single dwelling houses are affordable for people that want to live on their own house. My concern with that is just simply the cost of the apartments. So for a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old to rent a house, live in an apartment and then go and buy a house, there's just not a lot of meat left on the bone for them to save up for that down payment. And I think we have to be honest about that, address it. Another reason why zoning has to be local is why we have to make sure that our local townships are able to zone property according to what their neighbors need. The other thing, and specifically, Greg, you asked about ideas. As I drive through downtown Hastings or Ionia or other communities, one thing that we're overlooking is our downtowns that all have second floors. And many of them need help and they need to be rehabilitated and they make great apartments for the up and coming. And I think we have to work on that and be purposeful about how we develop our downtown. Beautiful downtown Hastings is amazing. We have more work that we can do there. Same with Ionia, same with other communities. Lastly, I would say when it comes to those downtown developments, I have a friend who would like to develop a downtown building. It's $200,000 just to support the structure so that then he can build. So, thank you. Sorry, Riley.
First and foremost, we need to cut unnecessary barriers and speed up. We need to cut red tape laws and remove barriers to make it easier to build housing here in Berry County and throughout all of Michigan. I am a product of someone who can't afford a house right now because the median age to buy a house is 40 years old. So what we need to do is we need to speed up permitting, invest in infrastructure, and support growth that government should make locally for each and every one of the local decision makers. Thank you.
I'll say first and foremost, we need to eliminate the pop-up taxes, which has previously been mentioned here. We've already passed a pretty substantial state property tax elimination package in the House of Representatives, which would do just that, eliminate pop-up taxes. We've also been working hard to reduce regulatory barriers and red tape. I serve on the Regulatory Reform Committee, and that's been one of our top priorities this session is how can we make housing more affordable? And by affordability, I'm not speaking about handing out more taxpayer money. I'm speaking about making this a streamlined, easier process, because it's tens of thousands of dollars in regulatory burdens and permitting that are added on to that cost of purchasing a home. And if I could touch back on pop-up taxes briefly, we're seeing elderly people aging out of their homes, the homes that they've raised their families in, who no longer can afford to keep the electricity on, to heat the home, and yet they are forced down into a smaller home and their property taxes are double what the original home is for. That is a very, very flawed system, and that needs to be a top priority for every single legislator and senator in the state of Michigan, is how can we see this through to the end, get this through the Senate, get that governor to pass it. If it takes next term, so be it. We need to be committed to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with looking at the regulatory burden. I'm a supporter of limited government. Limited government's in the middle of someone who's supportive of complete centralized control, which would be tyranny, and those who support no government involvement at all, which would be anarchy. So I support the middle. I look at what has been proposed for local zoning in Lansing right now. That is more to the centralized planning aspect. It's taking away local zoning rights when it comes to housing. It's saying what you can't do. You can't zone this, you can't zone that, you can't have parking be a consideration, you can't have lot size. I don't support that at all. That's taking away the local's ability to do zoning what's most fitting for their community. So I'm fine for permissive. You can do this, you can do that, give the locals more authorization to make decisions to increase housing supply, but not taking away local control. Decisions like this should be made at the most local level possible. When it comes to regulations, the number that Mr. Moore said in the beginning of $131,000 the average regulatory cost in a house it's unconscionable. We need to go through our building code, we need to clean it up and reduce regulations where they're not needed. That's probably the first place to start. I know if you look back at the energy parts of our building code that were enacted or put in place over 10 years ago, that added a sharp increase in the cost of housing. So we really have to look at reducing the regulations.
Very good. Mr. Swank, we'll start a third question with you. We're going to stay on the topic of costs. This time the rising costs of infrastructure. So things such as water, sewer, roads, bridges, and utilities are increasingly being passed on to developers, impacting the feasibility and affordability of housing and commercial and industrial projects. So what long-term strategies would you support at the state level to help rural and small population communities address these infrastructure costs while still allowing for sustainable growth and development?
One of the big infrastructure issues I think about has been internet. And I live in a small rural community, and we have adequate access. Does not meet the current levels for broadband requirements. And we're dumping a lot of money into this, and we're trying to get fiber optic. The local community is trying to get fiber optic run to all the different houses in the community. But it's a huge project. They've been working on it for, I think the late 80s and early 90s. They've been sinking fiber. And so I'm a proponent for going with, using Africa's example, when they went from phone lines, burying hard phone lines to every house. They just skipped that whole technology and went straight to cellular across the continent. And I'd like to see that happen with broadband internet, go to cellular Wi-Fi type internet, and expand that service, which would provide us with a quicker turnaround for these outlying districts and these rural communities, so that they can actually participate in the digital world. I've seen some really interesting technologies when it comes to expanding sewer and where they're using high pressure sewer lines, and the local sewer authority, Southwestern Berry County. Oh, my time is done. But thank you very much.
So the communities cannot grow without reliable infrastructure. The state should continue to invest in grants, revolving loan funds, and infrastructure programs that help the local governments improve the roads, bridges, water systems, sewer systems, and utilities. We need to reduce the burden on the local taxpayers and the developers alike, while ensuring the communities have the infrastructure necessary to support the future growth. As a county commissioner, one of my jobs is to approve tax increment financing for developments. With the new law that was put into place in 2023 allowing vacant land to be considered a brownfield, there are brownfield incentives, and developers can develop a new vacant property and use tax increment financing for their utilities. That's all good in theory. They get paid back over 20 years or 30 years for those taxes. So they're collecting a portion of each home's tax bill. The thing that we need to look at with the tax increment financing for the developers is what effect it has on emergency services. We can't take the tax money away that provides fire, ambulance, and safety to the communities that are just paying the developer back for 20 years. So I'm for TIF, but it does need to be tweaked a little bit so we don't lose those emergency services. Development is too expensive. If the developers have to pay for all of the utilities, your housing prices are going to go higher. It's just a fact.
So I'm happy to have this question, especially since we live in a very rural district and we have a lot of farmers. Growing up within that industry, one of the biggest struggles was the rural development. And any time that we tried to build, for example, we know that within the townships, these townships have to deal with the rising costs, whether it's a sewer connection, water connection, or even electrical connection. When that happens, the land developer has to pass it on to the buyers, and that helps make prices go up drastically. Compared to if it was in Grand Rapids, we wouldn't be having rising costs within the infrastructure. What we truly need to do is relook at our budget, but also figure out where we can put the budget correctly to be able to do our infrastructure and fix it correctly. Thank you.
Rodriguez is hogging that microphone, I see. So, like usual. I think there's a couple solutions that we can have. One is fiber optics is crucial for our communities, it's crucial for our kids to learn, it's crucial for our industries to have to be connected to the world. And so what that looks like, number one, there's lots of federal programs that have been out there that we've taken advantage of locally in Berry County. That's been a good thing. That being said, I do have a concern. The 29 employees at MEI, Berry County Telephone, and I think we need to protect their jobs and make sure that they have a future as well. That's a local company, and I think it's important to the success of our county and our community. Second, when it comes to water, Eagle does have programs. Eagle's a mess, and we have a lot of work to do when it comes to Eagle. But again, picking winners and losers, and rural communities always seem to come up a little bit short when the state government does that. Lastly, I'm opposed to the new brownfield expansion. Brownfield was meant for contaminated properties, and I'd like to see it remain that way. We would be supportive of that in the House of Representatives. So, thank you.
First and foremost, we need to prioritize core infrastructure developments that support long-term and predictable funding for roads and infrastructure. Brownfield expansion in rural communities, we really don't see that here. We need to make that a priority when it comes to giving taxpayer dollars and making sure that we are seeing investments back in our own community. That's all I have. Thank you.
These topics get a little bit taxing to talk about, so regarding the broadband in Berry County, so there are several state and federal programs that have used funding to close these gaps in Berry County through public-private partnerships. It can deliver reliable service. I have previously supported those kind of policies in Allegan County, and here in Berry, we must prioritize those last-minute connections and completion so that we can keep costs reasonable. Rural communities deserve the same connection as urban areas, and I will keep working with local leaders in Berry County to identify those needs and push for practical deployment. Yes, because broadband is, like previously stated, critical infrastructure, and I don't think that it's previously been kind of called critical infrastructure. It has been previously looked at as more of a luxury. If you live in a city, then you have these services available to you. If you're in the rural area, then you don't have that. But we're seeing an increase in homeschool. We're seeing an increase in people staying in their homes longer, elderly people in their homes longer, people working from home. And if you choose to live in the country, you should be able to have the same sort of infrastructure available to your home in the form of broadband. So I would support continuing to fund those programs and get Berry County all wired like the rest of West Michigan. Thank you.
I guess I'll start with when I was appropriations chair. We did a spending supplemental where we included $1.2 billion for drinking water and the clean water revolving funds. The clean water revolving funds is a grant program that municipalities throughout the state can apply to and get funding to do maintenance on their aging infrastructure. And then also drinking water revolving funds, similar setup. Locals can apply for grant funding for drinking water as well. So I think those are two very good programs that we already have in the state. We just need to keep putting money into them. When it comes to the brownfield redevelopment, it's a success story in my hometown of Lowell. There's a Flat River Outreach Ministries put it in affordable housing. Within there, 3 buildings, long story short, it's a tremendous organization, but they were able to get I think it's about $20,000 a year back to help offset the cost that it took to do all the remediation and all the infrastructure costs that it did to get those buildings up and running. And lastly, I'll say just a quick note on broadband. When I was appropriations chair, over 2 budgets, we put $400 million into the broadband expansion. It's been very successful. If you look throughout our state, we have an expansion here in Berry County. We have 123 out in Allegan. Broadband's expanding. It's taking more time than we'd like, but we've made a lot of progress over the last few years.
So I will start on broadband. I think as an educator, I saw firsthand the impact on my students who went to alternative high school during COVID, who lived here in Berry County, who didn't have access to internet, and we had to give them hotspots so that they could actually do their schoolwork, right? So we need to do more. It is a utility. It is a necessity in today's economy. But unfortunately, the federal BEAD funding, these companies that come in and take this money and get contracts with the state, they set where they're putting the lines, and there are still blackout zones across Berry County. So what we need to do is, if people are going to accept these funds, we have to set our own state provisions that say we want to see where they're at. We want to make sure there are no blackout zones, and if there are, we're clawing that money back. We're not giving you tax breaks if you're not helping all of our residents. That's not happening. That needs to happen. Next, what we're going to do is to help smaller townships and independent developers. Currently, they're bearing 100% of these costs for the water, sewer, and lines, and everything else. We need a long-term structural strategy of state funding, so I support significantly boosting statutory revenue for cost sharing with local governments, because far too often our townships for decades have been strapped with no capital due to the additional increase of funding, or increase of costs. So we need that, and advocating for advanced strategic infrastructure fund to offer low-interest revolving loans to communities with populations less than 25,000 to help them as well.
Very good, thank you. All right, question 4. We start with Mr. Frewen. Business growth and economic competitiveness, which cuts right to the heart of what we as a Chamber and Economic Development Organization do. So, Michigan has struggled mightily with ever-changing economic development programs and priorities, depending on which party is in power oftentimes. What ideas do you have for enacting a stable, bipartisan economic development strategy that will improve our ability to compete with other states, and that will strengthen our small business, climate entrepreneurship, and innovation in rural counties like Berry?
So Michigan needs a stable, predictable economic development strategy that goes beyond the election cycles. Businesses want certainty. And I'm supporting reducing the red tape, improving permitting timelines, investing in workforce development, supporting entrepreneurship, and creating a competitive tax and regulatory environment. Rural communities should not be overlooked when it comes to economic development resources that are allocated. And as a past president of the Portland Chamber of Commerce, it's very important when we would be deciding on the economic development incentives to look at it based on a party. We really need to look at the business. As a business owner for 31 years, when there is certain economic development funds that are given out, a lot of them are for large companies, and it makes it very small for the smaller companies. We need to have economic development more across the board to promote the entrepreneurship for our small businesses.
So Michigan's economic development problem is not just a base of a lack of programs. It's a lack of accountability and consistency. We've created, redirected, defunded, or even reconstructed economic developments across both party administrations, so it's Democrat and Republican. The small businesses in the rural communities are the ones that are left holding the bag at the end of every election cycle, and it's time that that stops. So I have drafted a bill about government transparency and spending, where any expenditure over $5,000 that the state has made, you as a taxpayer get to see directly where your money is going, and that is what needs to be done to help with economic development.
Thank you. Well, frankly, MEDC is a mess. There's a lot we need to do with MEDC, where it's not based just solely on a budget cycle or whoever's in power. As the chair of the Berry County Chamber Economic Development Alliance for 2 years, we saw that, where it was a constant. All of a sudden it's this focus, and then it's that focus, and that has to change. And I think we probably all be in agreement with that. Simple things like simpler permitting. I think at the same time we can also have regional hubs for business and economics. We have some unique opportunities here in Berry County alone that if they come to fruition based on decisions that were made 20 plus years ago. And if those things come to fruition, it puts us kind of at the forefront of some really unique opportunities. How we continue that and build off of that would be unique and be impressive for a small rural community. Last, I think that economic development needs to look at quality of life. And I think that's something that we often overlook. It is what's the quality of life that we're expecting out of our rural communities? What are people in rural communities, whether it's Hastings or Ionia, what are they looking for? What kind of jobs do they want? And then let's put our focus there. Too often, I think state government tries to chase a couple of big deals. I want to go after the small deals. I want to help our rural communities be successful where they're at and where they stand. Thank you.
First and foremost, we have to totally reform the MEDC by making a clear, constant mission focused on small businesses and the rural community. We need to lower costs, ease our regulations, and make Michigan the best place to grow a business and thrive. I believe we totally can do that by creating new jobs and making sure that that is our top priority so Michigan can thrive.
The state needs to get out of the way and stop picking winners and losers. The government has caused a lot of these issues now that have driven up costs for the average business holder in Michigan. First and foremost, the LDSI program in Michigan now as pertains to the state budget. Any legislator or senator, or whoever you are, if you are requesting an appropriation for your district, not only is that online for public view, but you also have to testify in a public hearing to explain to the people what exactly you plan on doing, what is the money for, who does it benefit, and why is that necessary? And I am proud to say that I have not put in for any of the LDSI requests because I have responsible townships who know how to manage their funds appropriately. Number 2, lowering taxes, simplifying permitting, and reducing redundant red tape. Because like I previously said, the government needs to get out of the way. Because the best economic plan is a job. Thank you.
Yeah, I would start with, we need to get back to trusting free enterprise again. Look at what we have built in this country in the nearly 250 years that we've been here. It's amazing. We need to get back to our founding principles. Free enterprise works. As Representative Rodriguez said, the government needs to just get out of the way. There's 3 things we need to do. First off, lower taxes. Second, restore right to work. And third, we need to reduce regulations and then streamline them. Where's the growth in this country? We can look at states where they're growing and states that aren't. Those without income tax are growing the highest. I think income tax is where we need to look first. Restoring right to work, that's easy. People should not be forced to be part of an organization which they do not want to be. I'm not anti-union. I think unions offer a great service for their employees, but if they're not, the employee deserves the right to walk away. That's how accountability works. And lastly, when it comes to regulations, if you look at other states, I heard an example of it. I believe it was in North Carolina. A company was looking to grow there, and they went down and talked to some people in their economic department, whatever it was, and they said, "Can you come back next week?" And they said, "Yes." They came back. They had over a dozen people in the room. Everybody that would be needed to get whatever they needed built was there in that room. They're like, "Okay, we need this permit, this permit, this permit. Okay, can you make that happen?" And they all made it happen in one meeting. So that's what we need to get to. We need to simplify and get back to trusting in the free market and not the government picking winners and losers because they do a bad job at it.
Well, first of all, I'm absolutely pro-union as a local union leader myself. I have a public school district who's the reason why we got on steps for the last 7 years since I've been president. But when we come to economic development here, we need to stop the shifting changes. And whether it's education, economic development, infrastructure, whatever it is, every time the legislature changes, the governor's office changes, we are all in a lurch because we don't know what's coming. So I'm proposing a 10-year economic framework, which means we lock in whatever we're doing for the next 10 years. That creates certainty. That allows us to actually know what our businesses have to do for the next decade. That will help support. But also we need to stop writing multi-million and billion-dollar blank checks to corporations who promise all these jobs and great things and don't bring them to our communities. Every one of those businesses we need to ban NDAs, and we also need to claw back the funds if they don't fulfill at least 60% of their promise for jobs. They don't bring those jobs back, that money comes back to us, the taxpayer. That's how that should work. Then when it comes on the next highest cost we have for businesses really is healthcare, and I know that, so I actually support MyCare, which is a public option for people to buy into for healthcare with a 2% employee share and a 4% employer share, which would save millions of dollars for our businesses on healthcare. Thank you.
This is kind of a personal topic to me. I ran a small manufacturing firm in this county forever. I was educated right in the school building, and a journeyman tool and die maker, and I opened up a machine shop. I started in my garage with nothing and built the business. Now, over the years, as I've watched other people build businesses, and the ones that are successful and the ones that aren't, the ones that were successful involved the people that actually started out and they did the hustle. And they built it off from small personal loans and credit cards and maybe some family money. The ones that I've seen notoriously fail across the county, almost without a doubt, almost every one of them have failed when we started handing them big bucks. And there was a small toy manufacturing company right in my hometown that they received over $2 million from Berry County Economic Development through federal loans and things like that. And the partnership broke up and one of the people skipped out with the money. Didn't do us any good at all. I've seen time after time where somebody receives private or possibly public grants that they have not done the work ahead of time to receive that money and really understand the commitment. There was one that I had the opportunity to teach the class as part of receiving the grant monies. They had to take classes, and I taught the business class. And out of all those people that received the $350,000 startup grant, only one of them was actually running. The others, I don't think they made it. And one of them was complaining because they were out of money and they were having to pay for their internet bill out of their own pocket. So yeah, I think we should provide education and support, but not giving away free money. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hudson, you're up. So we talked about housing costs, we talked about infrastructure costs, so let's talk about the next big elephant in the room, which is healthcare costs. So healthcare costs are increasing concern for Michigan businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses. What specific actions do you believe need to be taken to address the rising cost of healthcare in Michigan?
Healthcare costs is one of the areas where I am most honest about with the limits of what a state rep can alone fix. And much of the cost structure is on the federal level, but there are meaningful things that Michigan can do and should do to begin with. First, the association health plans, excuse me, and Michigan should make it significantly easier for small businesses that in kind fill this entire district and country to join together to purchase health insurance as a group, as pooling risk across many small employers drives costs down. That is one of the biggest things that we need to do is make the cost cheaper, not only for our employees, but our employers as a whole. Thank you.
I think there's a couple things we can do as a legislature. One is demand accountability when it comes to healthcare costs and pricing. Second, I think I'd like to increase the amount of competition that we have in the market. If we're all happy and excited about one medical system across all of Michigan, I think we should be concerned. Next, I think the cost of the workforce. Unfortunately, a lot of hospitals and practices have had to bring in traveling nurses, and they're not cheap. And so how do we invest in our local population to train young people to go into the profession? That's got to be crucial and something that we look at. Next, or maybe last, I would say, is also being able to teach people what a healthy lifestyle is and focus on a healthy lifestyle and opportunities. And again, I think if we pool some costs together and allow small businesses to join and pool their resources, we would also see a lot lower health costs. But I'll be honest, I know Hastings did a research study several years ago, and it said that 75% of small business owners said that they can't hire anyone else because of the fact that their healthcare costs were so high. This is a real issue in Berry County. It's a real issue across our district.
We need to create more competition, price transparency, and customer choice in healthcare. Small businesses and families deserve to know what the true cost of care is before receiving services. Reducing administrative burdens can also help lower those costs.
Healthcare costs not only burden small businesses, medium businesses, but they burden every single person at some point in their life. We need price transparency, tort reform, expanded plan options, and more competition. This is why I introduced House Bill 5254, which if you watch the State of the State speech, you would hear Gretchen Whitmer talking about medical debt reform. My bill would cap medical debt interest as 3% and stop predatory practices from collection agencies. We also have bills for price transparency, which is such a huge need in our state. We go to the doctor, we have no idea how much this bill is going to be until we receive it in the mail, and it's never, ever less than what we think it's going to be. This came out of a personal experience that I had in my early 20s after suffering a near fatal car accident. Because of my medical debt, I actually had to file bankruptcy. I don't hide it, I'm not ashamed of it, but now I'm in a position to make something change about it. So that's exactly what I've been committed to do. Thank you.
When it comes to the state of Michigan, probably the biggest thing that could happen to increase health insurance specifically for those on the individual marketplace and those that are small business owners is an increase in what's called the IPA assessment. The director of DHHS is going to have the authority by the end of the year to increase that assessment from $2.40 per member month up to about, I think it's $7 it's over $7 per member month. That doesn't sound like that much, $5, but it's about a $200 million cost. It's going to be transferred mostly to small businesses. So it's a huge deal, especially if you're a small business owner or you work for someone who owns a small business. We need to come up with a better solution than passing on those costs to small businesses. I think what we should do is find $200 million of general fund, pay for it for 1 year while we can come over a longer-term solution over the next year. So this is a huge deal. Hasn't really gotten much conversation, and I think by the end of the year we need to come up with a better solution. So the other thing I'll note, I did vote in favor of the price transparency bill. Price transparency, when it's been enacted in other states, has brought down costs. One, because you have the ability to shop around and be able to see who's offering what procedures or what cost of what place to approve. On the other, it has accountability, so you don't just get all of a sudden it's a surprising bill 6 months later. There's something you can point to like, hey, this is what the cost was. Thank you.
So I kind of touched on this in the last answer, just a little bit. But what I honestly believe in is supporting House Bill 4407, which is the MindCare bill. It's that public option for healthcare. This increases the amount of competitiveness across the state. It also reduces the cost not only to employees out of their paychecks, but also to small businesses and employers. Because right now, the overhead for employers across Berry County for health insurance is about 14 to 17%. If you could reduce that overhead down to about 4%, that's a huge cost savings for the employers. And the employees also, they're seeing 5, 7, 10% of their paychecks going to healthcare. If it's capped at 2%, that's great. This creates a huge statewide option pool for individuals for better insurance, lower premiums, lower costs for economic development, more money to actually go into the business structure, and keeping employees healthy so that they can come back to work.
Healthcare in this country is just completely out of control. We even have the Obamacare. I've had that pass when I first got laid off from a job. I went on Obamacare, and the tax deductions, or the medical deductions at the beginning, they're just incredible. The average working person cannot afford those long term. Maybe once, but a sustained hit for the cost of medical care, just can't handle it. There's a couple of solutions. The primary one is at the federal level, which would be the Medicare for All. And I'm a huge proponent of that. It's not popular among a lot of people, but it works. I've seen it work in other countries. I have friends in England that her husband suffered a catastrophic injury, and we would have just let him die in the United States. It would have been merciful. But they cared for her. The most expensive thing about her entire visit was the train fare from her house to the hospital every day while he was in care for months and months. And he still receives routine care. So that's it. Thank you.
Answer the question last. So the healthcare affordability is a major concern for families and employers alike. I will support increasing the transparency in healthcare pricing. There's nothing worse than asking your doctor, how much is that procedure going to be when they can't answer for you. We should have this transparency to be able to shop around. I know in an emergency situation that's a little difficult, but the transparency on the pricing is huge. We need to also encourage the competition of healthcare and healthcare insurance, and make it easier for people to understand the different policies to try to get them to compare apples to apples. Also support expanding the access and incentives to preventative care. I'm 57 years old. I know many men my age that have never had their prostate exams, never had their blood sugar checked. They don't want to pay that extra copay for that physical. And I keep explaining to them, if you've got a problem, you get to take care of it now. It's way more expensive if that's what your problem is the cost. But your health care is much more important than a dollar. Also, we need to work on practical reforms that lower the cost while maintaining the quality of care, and especially for our rural residents. In Portland, we don't have a hospital to go to. We've got to drive a long ways, 15 minutes to get to a hospital. It's very frustrating. So I think that's another need for healthcare is more local hospitals.
Very good. So several of you have talked about the importance of local control. And certainly we already touched on the importance of economic development both at the state level and at the local level. But now let's talk about something that's created a lot of tension across our state over the last 16 months, and it seems to be getting worse. So, Mr. Strong, how would you balance agricultural preservation, economic development, and emerging land use pressures such as renewable energy siting, data center expansion, battery and energy storage facilities, some of which are mandated by the state? How would you balance those as a legislator?
Yeah, I think that there's several things we can do. Some things are already in place. Let's hit the data center head on. The reality is I want data centers that are based in the U.S. I lived in North Dakota for a long time. Let's put them there. There's not many people out there, and it's cold, and it's a great environment. We can climb it. The other thing that's beneficial, we went to college, Bible College in Ellendale, North Dakota. They built a massive data center outside of town, and everybody in the community loves it. Great place for a data center. I don't want one in my backyard, and I don't want my neighbors to have one in their backyard either. But I do want data centers based in the U.S. if we possibly can. Alaska might be another great option. When it comes to economic development, we already have that in the brownfields. I'm supportive of the brownfields the way that they've been utilized for a long time. Like I said previously, I'm not in favor of the brownfields as the new interpretation. And I would like to see those lands developed. We have a lot of aging and outdated factories. Look at Lansing. We still have Fisher Body. What's there? Nothing. Why can't we develop those areas instead of pulling out and putting land or putting housing or anything else in our agricultural areas? Last, I think when it comes to housing, we can reduce the amount of land that you need to be able to build a house. It needs to be much smaller acreage, and so that we can put more housing in a more concentrated area and not cost more of our agricultural heritage that we so strongly love here in Great County.
Agriculture is the foundation of our district, and we must protect it and respect it. While balancing economic development opportunities, local communities should have a strong voice in major land use decisions. Let's use old industrial sites, also known as brownfields, for these data center projects if we must. But again, it is up to local control on if they want it or not. We also have to give back local control when it comes to wind and solar projects, and I'm looking forward to doing that as your next state legislature. Thank you.
Agricultural preservation and smart growth coexist when local communities lead. I oppose top-down state mandates on siting for renewables and data centers that override local zoning. As chair of the Oversight Subcommittee on Weaponization of State Government, I have fought government overreach. Strong right to farm protections and local authority on land use are essential. The state can offer technical help, but Berry County residents should decide what fits best for their communities. Unfortunately, I mean that would be the goal, right? But unfortunately, that's not entirely what it looks like. the townships can ultimately decide what their communities would and should look like, except for wind and solar, because the state stripped that zoning authority away from the locals. So they no longer have that option. But they do have that option with other things, like, example, data centers. But currently in the state of Michigan, if a township decides they don't want to have a data center, what is their recourse? The big corporations that come in can ultimately sue these townships, these locals, and drain them of everything. So I believe at the state level, we should develop a mechanism to help defend our locals against this overreach. Because ultimately, you guys should decide what's in your backyard with respect to personal property rights. That's the fine line. But we must protect those as well. So it's a local issue. At the state level, we should only support our locals when asked. Thank you.
One question that's worth asking is why is Michigan such a hotbed for data centers? It's because one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason, is that there's corporate subsidies. I voted against over it was $250 million of exemptions for sales and use tax to bring data centers here in the state of Michigan. That's how crony capitalism works, and that's how corporate welfare works. It's not the way it should be. If somebody wants to move in here, free enterprise, and it works, and they can get the local community on board, by all means, bring them in. But again, this is the government trying to help, and the government creating a problem. We need to break this cycle. I saw an article, I think it's roughly 600,000 acres of farmland has been lost in the last 10 years alone in the state of Michigan. Why is that? It's because it's cheaper to go to a pristine, clean, open area of farmland rather than doing brownfield redevelopment. We have to change that equation. We have tools to do brownfield redevelopment. Like candidate Strong, I did not support the most recent proposed changes, but I still think it's a good program, and I think that we do need to look at expanding in some ways to change this equation so people will look to brownfield. If you look at what happened in Mundy Township, I can't get into all of it. I would encourage you to read Paula Gardner from Bridge, Michigan. She wrote a lot of articles. They leveled the whole community around farmland. Think of all the brownfield property there is in Flint, Michigan that could be used. We need to change the equation for that.
I think this is one area where everybody on this dais is gonna agree on something. I do not agree with the top-down mandates from the state on this. Absolutely not. No, local control 100%, including local voice. I think whenever any of these developments come, they need public notice, public hearing, public comment, and they need to know exactly what we think about them when they come to us. And they need to actually give us all the information. We need to ban NDAs with local officials and mandate closed-loop water cooling for any of these data centers if they are agreed to come into our communities. But they also need to pay 100%, not us, they pay 100% of all the development costs for their infrastructure. That should not fall back on the taxpayers to pay 75% more in their water and electricity bill, because we're not using that electricity, they are. They need to pay that money. So we need to really focus on shifting that burden back to those corporate entities. We need to expand the zoning. We need to add specific zones for these data centers and large infrastructure areas such as wind and solar, and add those as additional categories under the zoning law. And we must also make sure that landfills, brownfields, or commercial rooftops are used for wind, solar, or anything else before they touch farmland.
Well, I agree with everybody what they're talking about with the data centers. That's nice. I want to talk a little bit about solar and the farmland use for solar. Now, there's been a big solar panel system set up down in southern Berry County, and there's some big, huge ones over in Marshall. It's outside my district. But I'm a huge proponent for agrivoltaics, which is the dual use of land. In the end, it's a landowner's property, and they can decide what crop they want to grow on it. And if solar is the crop they want to grow, and if they're getting paid, we'll just say roughly $800 a year to lease the field for solar versus maybe $300–400 a year per acre for a crop they're pulling off, and I can see why they might want to lean towards leasing their property out for solar. But there's also a concept that we can use in Michigan called community solar, and it's creating microgrids that belong to the local community, and the community owns it, and they create their own energy cooperative and control their energy costs, so they're not at the mercy of large energy monopolies to help reduce their costs. I'm also a huge proponent to provide more education and more loans for young people to get started, to help take over the farms or to lease land so that they can get into agriculture. Because it's not just the people we have involved in it now, but we have to think of the future generations of agriculture as well. Thank you very much.
So the agricultural remains the backbone of really all of the communities in Berry and Idaho County, and a lot of Eaton County and a lot of Kent County that our district involves. So, you know, we need policies that are going to protect the productive farmland. A lot of people don't realize the corn you see in these fields, the soybeans that you see in these fields, and the wheat, we consume very little of that. That feeds our animals. If we can't feed the animals, the herds are going to have to be reduced, which means we're going to pay more for the animals, the beef, the chicken, the pork. It's a little bit down the line, but if you're destroying this agricultural property for these data centers, that's what's going to happen. The other issue you have, farmers need a place to put their manure. There's legislation going right now to prohibit the dairy farmers from spreading their manure when the ground is frozen. I mean, it's got to go somewhere. We've got to put it somewhere. So the MPSC should not decide on renewable energy and wind. That should be to our locals. The state overreach it's out of line. We know what's best for our communities. So whether discussing the renewable energy projects, the data center projects, or the industrial development, the local community should have a meaningful voice in the decision that affect their future. I'm all for putting the data centers on the contaminated brownfield sites, clean them up, put them there, plenty of infrastructure. Solar, put them on the interchanges of the expressway. They're already owned by the state. The grid system's already there, so that's my idea for that.
So I love this question and specifics of growing up within farming, as this one hits home quite a bit. The data centers, everybody knows, we don't want them here. Majority of us farmers don't want them here either, because we know that once that land is either paved, fenced in, or even industrialized, it's contaminated and we can never touch it again. But the food that's being put on our table, for example, like the livestock, like the bacon that I got to eat yesterday morning, it was beautiful and delicious. That won't be as common anymore. The minute that these data centers, even these solar farms, even wind farms start taking over. Solar and wind is not a priority within the state, and it shouldn't be. And that's where giving local control entirely comes back. Remember, as Ronald Reagan once said, I'm the government and I'm here to help. As that's something that we don't like here, which means that we need to lessen the state control when it comes to this and give it entirely back to local control and sovereignty. What we need to do is keep data centers out, wind out, especially solar. As like I said, once that land is contaminated, it is no longer able to be used. Thank you.
Very good. Our next question starts off with Mr. Pilar. Despite the tremendous work done by the Berry County Chamber of Commerce and its partner organizations across this county and beyond, limited access to child care remains a significant barrier to workforce participation, particularly due to the shortage of providers. What policies or strategies would you support as a legislator to expand the number of child care providers as well as the overall child care workforce to address these gaps in rural communities?
Great question. Child care shortages keep many parents out of the workforce. We need to reduce unnecessary regulations that make it difficult to open and expand child care facilities while supporting workforce training for providers. Families need more affordable and accessible options.
I completely agree with that. And I always say, do not say that in a forum. That's the perfect answer that I was actually going to say, but I would actually, let's go back a little bit farther to high-paying jobs. If we have high-paying jobs, the burden of daycare isn't so strenuous. So that, go back even farther, we addressed the trades earlier, we addressed different programs. I would say, like, that has to be the number one thing that we're focusing on, is getting kids success ready. So when they are young homeowners, young families, that they already have the income to be able to sustain that family. And even at that 30 years ago, we had one parent was working the majority of the time. And now it takes 2 parents working full time with, what, 1/3 of the wages going to daycare. So that is a concern. So we do have a plan in the House that actually changed the licensing a little bit on daycare centers. So currently in the state of Michigan, if it's in a plaza or a strip, you could not have a daycare in that facility if there was a different kind of business in that same strip. Like, let's get rid of that. If you want to open a daycare, the state needs to get out of the way, help you open a daycare, streamline the process with licensing, but also keep safety a top priority. So, thank you.
Maybe I'll help candidate clean up that Reaganism just a little bit. It's a great quote. It's what's the 9 worst words in the English language? I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
Yes.
I think I have that same philosophy, and there's 2 different programs that I was involved with when I was appropriations chair in the House that I think relate to that limited government approach that Reagan was getting at there and childcare. So the first was Representative Greg Van Workum, who was the subcommittee chair of general government at the time, came to me and said, hey, here's a proposal for a thing called tri-share, where the employee, the employer, and the government will work together, and the 3 of them kind of put some resources together and customize a solution at the local level for child care. So let's do it, let's do a pilot, see how it works. Pilot went well, we're expanding it. Unfortunately, the Senate Democrats put forward a proposal that made it statutory instead of a budgetary program, and it would have handed authority over to the executive and weakened the legislative branch. So I didn't support that. But that's an example of a solution that will work. Another one I'm really proud of is it's called Wonder School. And what they do is they help people start up. So instead of having a government-run program, try to help people create programs throughout their communities, let's partner with somebody who does this, and does it with a good job, or does it well, I should say. So Wonder School, what they do is they help. Say there's a single mom or a mom with small kids that's going to be working from home. It helps them start up programs in their own house, helps with the regulations, helps with finding customers, and helps with all of the networking and the regulatory stuff that goes with it. Sorry, I have a red card, so.
So this is near and dear to me. You guys know I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, I'm a special education teacher actually, and I started my career in elementary ed. And although I don't have kids of my own, I say every single year that I have 150 kids when I go back to school. So I think we need to expand tri-share. We need to further expand that and provide better opportunities with the cost sharing between employer, employee, and the government to make sure that we can expand that program to rural communities. But we also have one of the best early childhood education certification programs in the state, just 20 minutes south of us, with the Fensfield Center right here in Hastings. I'm talking about Pella Community College, where 70% of that early childhood education certificate can be completed online, with only 30% in person. So that means I'm going to say it this way, if we stop attacking education all the time, we can actually get more people willing to actually want to go into education. And if we do that, then we can actually increase the workforce we need, expand the home child care opportunities, and ultimately, long range, I would love to bring these child care programs into the public school system, where it's no cost to the parent, and it's paid for through your tax dollars already through the public school system.
Well, I'm a grandpa. I haven't had kids at home in a long time. And I did help raise my granddaughter for a short period of time, and we took care of her because both of her parents were busy working. Her father was driving 50, 60 miles to work one way, and her mother was driving 10, 15 miles. And so we helped raise my granddaughter for a year until they finally got a place to live up in Grand Rapids. So I'm going to pass on this question and hand it over to my colleague.
Thank you. I myself am also a grandpa, expecting another grandchild July 2nd, I think it is. So looking forward to that. As a self-employed individual, I do have times where I'm watching my grandchild because the daycare is not available. Both my son and his wife they're fortunate they can afford the daycare. They have good jobs. But the problem is there's a lack of it. So when you have a home daycare that is down because of an illness or whatever, there's no place else to take your child. In my community, there has not been a new daycare outside of a home daycare established in years. It's nearly impossible because the local zoning requires special land use for a daycare. I understand the reason why they want special land use, because they want to make sure it's in the right place for the safety of the children. But they make it so cost prohibitive that outside of home daycares are impossible in my community. Something needs to be done with that. I also will support and encourage the public-private partnership with Tri-Share, increasing the child care capacity. It will help the parents entertainer remain in the workforce, and I think that's key, is we need to keep our parents in the workforce, not only for their livelihood, but for the business's livelihood as well. So, that's it.
Oh, 2 mics. Childcare is not just only, it's a workforce issue, small business issue, as well as a family issue. When parents can't have a childcare option. Actually, just at my employer, we just actually had the circumstance happen where we couldn't have a couple employees come in last week because they couldn't find childcare, and that was even up in Kent County. With that being said, I agree with Representative Regas where we need to reduce the regulations as well as licensing and the burdensome that Lansing has created on our daycare centers as well as preschooling. With that being said, we have so many that are causing it to be the hardest way to start a daycare center or even childcare at all. And the more burdens that we have on this, the less successful we're going to be at setting our young children up for success and getting them ready for K through 12 education, for example. So the first step that we need to do is to start removing the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. When my wife and I were expecting our first child 20 years ago, my wife came and said, hey, cool if I just stay home for a few years. We're blessed that 10 years later she decided to stay home. It was a sacrifice for our family. And that was a decision that we made very personally. And that being said, I feel very blessed to be in Berry County, where locally we've made some decisions where private organizations have decided that, hey, we're going to step up and we're going to fill the gap. And we're going to do it better than most. John Revere, YMCA, stepped up in a big way to provide child care here locally. The Berry County Chamber has a project down in the river. These are good things. And it is possible for local organizations to get involved with child care. Next, obviously if we can get some expansion grants. I should have, as an organization, we looked at early child care. And we wanted to get involved in that and thought that it would be a great thing for us to be able to help out in the community. Here was the issue. When the building was done, it was 6 months to complete all the permitting required. That's what we were told. At minimum, 6 months. So we'd have all this upfront investment. ROI, 11 to 12 years. And for a small nonprofit organization, that wasn't a reality for us. And so how do we remove and speed up that whole process? I don't know, maybe bring it back to some local control. I don't think that you get rid of all the regulations, because some of those regulations are in place for the safety of children. I still think we need to keep that in mind.
Very good. Representative Regas, you are up next. I swear I did not plan it this way. It just came up in the circular rotation, but we seem to have an issue here, of which there is a difference of opinion between the House and the Senate. Perhaps not between your colleague at the table here, but nevertheless, a difference of opinion, not the only difference between the House and the Senate, of course, but one that's very important to us as a business community, and I know you've heard something about, and the House has taken action. So, the question is, the Going Pro Talent Fund provides resources to help employers train, upskill, and retain their workforce. What is your position on the Going Pro Talent Fund, and would you support its continuation, expansion, or improvement to better serve rural counties like Berry?
When you said that the House and the Senate had a disagreement, I thought we were going to have I thought it was going to be a more kind of interesting question, right?
Spicy, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a little spicy, so I thought it was going to be a spicy question. That's why you saved it for me. So question number one, is that what you said? Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, I think I touched on that briefly when we did question 2. So yes, I've supported Going Pro. Obviously, like we talked about this previously, about the CTE centers, the fact that Berry County does not have the same opportunities as its neighboring counties, and especially since I born and raised here in Berry County and Hastings, spent the majority of my life here, this county means a lot to me. And when we have obviously the area manufacturing, we have Bradford White, we have Bradford White here in the building today, hello. And we have Viking Corporation. My father worked at Viking Corporation until he passed away in 2008. My grandmother retired from Hastings Manufacturing. So these are all opportunities that we have a lot overlooked as Berry County residents. And we should have a bigger goal of making sure that we are getting our local talent ready to go and work and develop that talent pipeline to get these students into any career that they wish, even if it is different than the other kids in different areas. Should have the same capabilities and opportunities.
So for those that aren't aware of how the Going Pro program works, it's very decentralized. So essentially, if you own a business and you, hey, I want to hire this person, but they don't have quite the skills that they need, you can get up to $2,000 to give them the training they need to be able to fill that job. And, or if they need an apprenticeship, they get up to $3,500. It works very well. There's a long history. There's a good track record. I went back and looked at some of the statistics. So since 2014, 60% of the jobs have gone to employers with less than 100 employees. So this really helps out small businesses. There's been over 9,000 awards since 2014, and sometimes awards will have more than one employee. So if you look at 2024 and 2025 alone, there were 11,000 employees that got a new job, and there were over 20,000 employees that got upscaled. And that was for 953 different companies. So it's very successful. I met with West Michigan Works a few weeks ago. I had a conversation with them about it and how it works specifically in West Michigan. Yeah, it's actually a program. I don't know if there's a better way to run it. It's working very well. I don't know why Democrats in Lansing are trying to cut it out, but I'm hopeful we can get it in again in this year's budget.
Absolutely, Going Pro needs to continue to be funding, but it needs to be expanded. Not just capped at where it was previously. This year it saw a 42% reduction in funding. That's massively hurting our communities already. So for small businesses and manufacturers right here, you're absorbing that total cost to be able to actually give that technical training or those skills needed for the workforce. But in Lansing, I'm going to fight to not only restore but expand that and establish a specific category for that funds and carve out right for small businesses in rural communities. Because right now, I don't know if you know this, but over 75% of the funds through that program went to the cities, went to urban centers, went to massive corporations, not small businesses, because they have dedicated grant writers who can write these grants to get these funds. So we need dedicated carved out funds to specifically help rural communities and small businesses and family farms so that they can also access their fair share of these funds while we expand it.
Michigan has had funds similar to this for a long time. And many years ago when I got out of the military, I was enrolled right here in Hastings in a program very similar to Going Pro. I was already a journeyman at that time. But the company that hired me, that was the icing on the cake where 50% of my wages were going to be paid for through a grant program. So I landed a job during a tough economic time because of programs like this. So I'm very much in support of this kind of thing, especially with the need for skilled trades and other labor positions such as that.
I strongly support the Going Pro Talent Fund and would support the increase in funding for it as well. As a business owner, I understand the challenge of finding and retaining skilled workers. This program helps the employers train the employees for real-world jobs and that are demanded today, that we need in our communities today. The continued funding of the program will help ensure that the rural communities like Berry County will receive fair access to the grants. I think that's huge, that we have fair access across the state. So not just the major cities get this and the major businesses. I actually reached out to the plant supervisor of a company in Lansing called American Tooling Center. And they are a large defense contractor that build parts for the federal government. And they use the GoPro Talent Fund all the time. They connect with Michigan Works. They give them their training, what they want the person trained on. When they're awarded the grant from Michigan Works, then Michigan Works will help train them, whether it be just for that specific job or whether it's for the apprenticeship program. So very well used. I hear nothing but good things about Michigan Works and how those employees are helping the businesses.
So I support the pro funds 100%. And with that being said, that's because our employers within our district identify the training that the workers need and not the bureaucrats that are in the Lansing offices every single day. But here's the honest thing, the honest problem about it with Berry County. Our small manufacturers, our trade shops, and even our agricultural businesses are buried by the state regulations that are consuming the time and the staff capacity from applying for these pro funds. And that's where we need to start removing some of these regulations to be able to make the pro funds more applicable as well as efficient within the state of Michigan.
You know, in Berry County, we do have grant writers. We have people that are qualified to write these grants. They're pretty smart individuals. The reality is we need Lansing to value Berry County and Ione County. And we need them to want to invest here. And that's why we need somebody from this area to go and fight for us. At the end of the day, I've been a part of the workforce readiness program here in Berry County, led by Chris Stafford. He's doing a phenomenal job. Nicole Lake serves on that board. There's a good initiative here right now. We need it funded. And that's going to take more than just state dollars. That's going to have to include that our local industry gets involved as well. I think many of them are ready to get involved and want to get involved. It's going to take local government to see the value in it and want to invest in it. And at the end of the day, it's going to take young people to want to stop playing video games and start going to work.
I just want to take a second to circle back on education. The problem that we're seeing in our education system is the fact that Governor Whitmer and the Lansing Democrats what they've done to our education system. We need to get back to the basics: critical reading, math, science, arithmetic. Nearly 40% of our third graders cannot read. But as your next state representative, I will fully support the Pro Talent Fund. And why? Because it helps train, it helps give money to employers to incentivize people coming into their workforce to train. And it does not require them to have a 4-year degree, which here in Berry County and throughout the district, I fully believe that we don't need a 4-year degree to succeed. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you all for your thoughtful responses. That concludes our key policy questions. You did pretty well with your time in minutes, so thank you. We have a lot more questions than I thought we would. However, we now face a real challenge, which is not only the rapid fire questions, but also the fact that we have 10 questions total left. 5 rapid fire and 5 from the audience. If we all take a minute for each one, that's 80 minutes. We have 47, so you can see the struggle. So, I'm not a math major, but what we're going to do is we'll do the 50-second rapid fire. Take it, if you need all 50, take the time. If not, that's fine too. And then we'll go through as many of the audience questions as we can. Fair enough? We'll start with Senator Albert. The first rapid fire question: what steps would you take to increase the adoption of registered apprenticeships in Berry County?
Yeah, really quick, I don't want to get all on going pro again, but I think that's a terrific way. Like you said, you get up to $3,500, so I would do that. And then also improve our CTE programs and expand it to our state.
I think where I would focus this is bringing a school, industry, and trades union partnership together to be able to expand the trade union's access across the county alongside our community colleges.
I would start young and middle school, start introducing students to vocational education and career education at that age, and then start going forward with it at the high school level now.
I would expand partnerships between employers, schools, and training providers while promoting apprenticeships as a pathway to high-paying careers in the skilled trades and technical fields.
We surely need to expand on the trade industry, and that's where registered apprenticeships are going to come in. And with that being said, we need to introduce it within our schools at all ages, and stop, like I mentioned earlier, stop cramming a 4-year degree down our children's throats, as they truly know not everybody wants to go to college. And with that being said, we need to give them the opportunity of an apprenticeship if that's what they desire.
Bigger part of a bigger education question, we're going to have to start differentiating our high school diplomas. It's something that many states across this nation have done. Michigan's been resistant of it. I currently reside on the only school in the state of Michigan that has differentiated diplomas. I'd like to see that happen. I'd also like to focus on apprenticeships not happening in younger ages, but actually in 11th and 12th grade, where I think it would be important. Lastly, congratulations to Ed Domke. He's done a phenomenal job here at Hastings area schools in promoting CTE. I know he's not here, but over 40 years in CTE, and he's done a phenomenal job.
First and foremost, we need to expand partnerships between schools, employers, and trade organizations to create more opportunities for our high schoolers going into either the workforce or continuing their education in college.
I would encourage local businesses to get involved earlier with children, especially local manufacturing, and even the unions have them come in and talk to these kids at a younger age, get them excited. Even maybe instead of going to the zoo on a field trip, maybe go to a manufacturing facility so these kiddos can learn what it takes to build things in our country and how amazing our manufacturing is right here in our county.
Very good. Our next question is to you. Many citizens may not be aware of this, but I know many business owners are. There's proposed legislation in Michigan that could change how workers are classified as independent contractors, forcing more to be classified as employees versus being classified as independent contractors. What is your view on balancing worker protections with the need for flexibility for businesses that rely on independent contractors, particularly rural and small businesses?
So the current legislation that is out there for independent contractor classification, I currently don't support in its existing form. With that being said, if you don't meet the ABC test and you're a large corporation, which means if it's not the duty of your organization, the purpose of your organization, and somebody else already in your employee is not already doing that same job, then you can be an independent contractor. If you say yes to any of those, you should be an employee, not an independent contractor, and I call that wage theft and wage fraud. But we need exemptions for small businesses and smaller corporations and rural farms.
I worked for years as an independent contractor, having my own business and small manufacturing firms. And I had to provide documentation to the organizations I was doing work for that yes, I was actually a legitimate business and could prove that I was one. And we should keep something simple like that.
I own a business that has independent contractors. And independent contractors provide a valuable flexibility for both the workers and the businesses. And I support preserving that flexibility while ensuring that the laws prevent the misclassifications and abuse. Real estate agents are independent contractors. The model will not work differently, and our industry is constantly challenged on this.
In rural communities like ours here in District 78, independent contractors offer flexibility, and it's not a luxury. It's how our small businesses and our family farms survive is with independent contractors, and we need to make sure that they don't have as many regulations like everybody else does. We need to make sure that it's also going to get a competitive market so it keeps the businesses going as well.
Yeah, let's be clear, there's been several reclassifications. We're just now facing the newest one. Ultimately, we need to make sure that business owners understand the rules for the classifications. I don't think we need a one-size-fits-all approach. I think government wants to try to push one thing and not understand rural America. So.
My dad is an independent contractor, so we definitely have to make sure that they are protected, but businesses also need flexibility. Let's preserve opportunities for independent contractors by preventing abuse. Thank you.
This is terrible policy, absolutely not. This is the lightning round, so.
Yeah, to add to that, this is a job killer. And when you see proposed legislation, I've been doing this for 10 years now, you ask the question, what's this trying to solve? This isn't solving problems, as my colleague here, the competitor here said. We have the ABC test already in place, it works. We don't need this. This is simply an attempt to use the government to squeeze out competition. So, no, this is bad policy.
Very good, Mr. Swank. Question 3 to you. I did not come up with this, I swear to God, and I apologize, it's only 50 seconds. I'm sure you'll need about 10 times that. But what policies would you support that lower energy costs and increase grid reliability for residents of Berry County and the wider West Michigan region?
Community solar, community microgrids. So in other words, creating co-ops in the local community to regulate our own power supply.
We need balanced energy strategy that prioritizes reliability, affordability, and grid security through a diverse mix of natural gas, nuclear, renewables, and emerging technologies.
What would be best in the state of Michigan is energy source diversification that does not sacrifice the grid reliability in the state of Michigan. We need to be open, yes, to solar farms, but at the same time, we need to make sure that they're not going to affect our farmers as well.
Thank you. I recently talked to a lineman who replaced a pole very recently. It's put in the 1930s. Our grid's in trouble right now. Best way to do it, cheapest way to do it is actually nuclear energy, although I would support coal, natural gas, like Terry mentioned. Actually worked for 5 years in special education in the coal hotbed of America. But I think nuclear is the way that we need to go. We can do these smaller nuclear projects and provide energy for entire cities.
We have to keep an all-above energy approach that keeps cost effective and grid reliable.
diversify our energy grid, coal, nuclear, natural gas, solar, wind, common sense, diversifying the grid while respecting personal property rights, and stop allowing these utilities to keep raising the rates. It seems like every year they're petitioning to raise our rates. We need to stop that now.
The most important thing we need to do is repeal the Democrats' 2023 Green New Deal. That is going to cost all of you, everyone in Michigan, billions and billions and billions of dollars. The utilities are not going to meet those costs. They are passing them on to you, and they're doing it right now. We have to get rid of it. It's not going to work. I'm not anti-renewables, by all means. If they can stand on their own 2 feet and they can pass the local zoning, put them on. That's fine, if it's economic. But we've got to get rid of those mandates, or we are going to be at a huge disadvantage nationally.
This is where I disagree. I think we already have a very diversified portfolio when it comes to energy. The problem really is the rate hikes. 2 rate hikes within 6 months is ridiculous. I support the ratepayer bill of rights that's being introduced in the legislature, which would mean that if a energy corporation is making more than 8.2% in profit, they cannot raise our rates. That's not allowed. And if we have, like we often do, the worst reliability and the longest outages, if we have extended outages longer of 48 hours, we get a reimbursement or a rebate on our account. That way, we can hold them accountable for increasing our rates and not having reliable service.
Great. Question number 4, Mr. Frewen, you were leading us off. Should broadband infrastructure be required or incentivized in new housing and commercial developments? Why or why not?
Yes, it should. Broadband is not a luxury anymore. It should be incorporated into the new residential and commercial developments whenever practical to ensure future competitiveness and connectivity. And if it's installed when the project is happening, it is going to cost less. We're not going to have issues with it hitting a power line or hitting a natural gas line while we're trying to put this broadband in. If you put it in with all the other utilities in its plan, it will be much cheaper.
I'm going to say yes on this one, especially because the decision on whether to require it or even incentivize it, needs to be with the local townships and within our communities and not in the hands of Lansing. But just as mentioned before, when hooking everything up, it clearly makes sense to hook up the broadband with it. Just as Terry mentioned, not to hit a gas line, for example, because if we hit a gas line, we know we're in a lot of trouble.
Yes.
Yes. Sure.
I have more to say, but it's like a quick response, it's okay.
I'm a no on this. I think it's outside of the scope of government. I don't think we need to be making mandates in this future.
I don't think that we should be hitting independent builders with actual heavy-handed mandates that drive up construction costs. We need to have the state better utilize the federal BEAD funding to provide last-minute infrastructure grants to help offset connection costs for developers up front and reduce housing costs.
The only concern I have with this is that the technology is changing so rapidly that what is it going to be like by the time the house is built?
Very good. Mr. Hudson, our last rapid fire question. If elected, what is one policy you would prioritize that would have the greatest immediate impact on Berry County?
Well, I love this question because I can go on about it. But one of my biggest priorities is giving local control back instead of stripping it away from our little local communities like the city of Hastings or even like Woodland Township in Lake Odessa, for example. We need to make sure that local control is given back as well as government transparency within our spending in the state legislature. Like I said, as a taxpayer, it is time that we know exactly where each and every penny that our state is paying is going.
Obviously, workforce and economic development, that's tied to childcare, tied to housing, tied to our infrastructure, but more importantly, education. Education that's not tied to geography.
I would say my top priority is making Michigan more affordable. Let's cut income tax, rein in on property tax, totally reform the MEDC, and ease on regulations.
My gas tax holiday bill.
For Berry County specifically, I would like to get my $150 million CTE expansion grant program off the ground.
For me, I'm going to go back to the Going Pro Talent Fund, expanding that to double the size it previously was with the specific carve-outs for rural and small business communities.
I'd really like to see a vocational education center built out to the Pheasantville Center.
It's very hard to say what is a top priority. I would say the reduction or elimination of our pop-up tax when homes are sold, but improving the affordability by creating jobs, increasing the housing supply, and controlling the government spending, and making Michigan a more competitive place to live, work, and raise a family. So there's 5.
Very good. Well done, everyone. I think we're going to do this. I think we're going to make it. I think we're going to do this. All right, let's move on to the audience questions. Mr. Stronger, we'll start off with you, and then we're going to combine the first audience question with the last question that I didn't ask under the policy section because it's very similar and they have the same theme, and they both use the same word, which is engage. So it's talking about and asking about how you're going to engage. So, if elected, how will you engage with local governments, businesses, and economic development and nonprofit organizations to ensure that rural community priorities and your constituents' needs are represented in Lansing? That's you.
Perfect. I've been actually a beneficiary of all of those things. Running a nonprofit organization. How do you do that? You start by listening. The reality is our township supervisors, our township boards know a lot about what their needs are. Our city councils, they know what their needs are. Our county commissioners, they know what their needs are. So you have to listen and then figure out how to make that work when you get to Lansing and how you can best benefit the community that you came from. And then I would say, in addition to that, is spend as little time in Lansing as humanly possible, and get home and be home and represent home.
We have to listen to the voters within the district. So listening to each and every one of you before making a yes or no vote on a piece of legislation and going directly to you guys before making that vote and seeing how it won't just affect me as a legislature, but you personally. I want to hear your voice. Thank you.
I think that the greatest thing that I have learned this term working in a split government is how to effectively work in a bipartisan fashion. I think any of you that know me in this room know that I am a staunch conservative. However, when the policies align, we need to work together to get things done. Because really, we want to fix the same problems. Often our solutions is where we kind of break down. So often just sitting and talking with your local officials or your constituents, we can solve a lot of problems if we just have a seat at the table and actually listen to each other. And I think that has been lost in the media and in the news, and it doesn't have to be so toxic. We can actually sit down and achieve great things when we are willing to listen and commit to fixing an issue. So that's what I'm doing. And I do have a 100% voter record, by the way. I've never missed a day of session, I've never missed a day of committee, and I love this district so much. There's not a lot of drama in my district, so I oftentimes find myself at night scrolling Facebook into my community pages, looking for problems. And I found some pretty good problems on Facebook that we were successfully able to fix. Sorry about that.
I've only missed voting one time, it was when my twins were born. Wasn't gonna miss that day. I guess how to work with locals, I'll just give a few quick examples. I was approached by the ISD CTE director in Naomi County. They have an issue where they're gonna have CTE instructors that are gonna lose their credential. So working on a solution, introduce bills, trying to get that extension. Another one, I was reached out by a township supervisor. There was a constituent who had a PA 116 issue, a tax issue, treasury. Worked on a statutory change, got that fixed. The last one, Mayor Tosla, he reached out with a family of Spencer family who keeps Spencer had the tragedy on M6, the tow truck driver. So I worked in bipartisan fashion to get the move over law improved through the Senate. Hopefully we can do something through the House, but that's how I've worked and talked to locals and try to find solutions. That's what I'd like to do in the future.
So I've actually started my campaign this way. I filed last May. I've been doing this for 14 months. Don't ask me why I'm that insane to do this. But I did it by listening. I've been to 24 of the 26 townships. I've committed to what's called a draft first policy, where before even a word of a bill is written on a page, I'm going to talk with constituents. I'm going to get your input, and I've committed to quarterly legislative advisory councils in all 6 counties to ensure that everybody's voice is heard, and you don't just come to me when there's a concern blowing up the phone lines in the Senate, because you know how to get a hold of me already, and you know exactly where I'm going to be, when I'm going to be there.
The job is about listening. That's the way I run my campaign, is I sit and listen to people. I'll go to the township board meetings, and then afterwards I'll sit and listen to what people have to say to me. I've got some excellent ideas.
So as a Miami County Commissioner, I understand that good representation starts with listening. So if elected, I'm going to maintain the regular communication with local officials, the business leaders, the farmers, the educators, Chamber of Commerce's and economic development organizations throughout Berry County and the 78th District. As the chairperson this year of the Miami County Board of Commissioners, I made it a goal of mine to attend every single township, village, and city meetings. I think it's very important that the people that are in the higher ups understands what's going on in the communities. I'm also attending regularly a program called Miami County Connect, where business leaders and current elected officials attend to network, and I hear the struggles that the businesses are running into. The very last thing is our county has an elected officials meeting every quarter. I've attended those for the last 3.5 years. Very informative. I'm listening. My friends and family call me the voice of reason, and when they say, "Hey, I got a guy that can answer that," they're calling me. I'm listening. Find out the problem. Find a solution for the problem.
Well, first and foremost, it begins with being in district, right? So we need to spend more time within the district and not just in Lansing. Yes, I'm there to vote and make sure that your voice is being heard, but secondly, we need to make sure that our small business owners, with the meetings that I have with all of them, especially with the mayors, we need to make sure that your voice is truly being heard in Lansing.
Very good. Mr. Blar, you're up next for this question. Looking ahead, what do you believe are the most important investments Michigan can make in youth development outside of the classroom, and how would you support these efforts?
Absolutely, that is a great question. One thing in particular is that we need to set every student up for success. And no matter if that is through the workforce or not through the workforce, we have to set every student up for success. How we would do that is let's propose legislation to work with our local business owners, local community members to make sure that the next generation has a voice and is set up to succeed. Thank you.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question. Looking ahead, what do you believe? What do you believe are the most important investments Michigan can make in youth development outside the classroom, and how would you support these efforts?
Okay. I think that real-life education is important outside of the classroom, such as employment. This is nonprofits can be involved. There's youth camps. There's positive role model programs in our communities that can help fill in some of those gaps and help our students.
Yes, this is a good question. I guess I would start with, I'm not sure state investment is the solution to many of the problems we face within our communities. If you look at the amount of households where children don't have a father present, that's all. That's a multifaceted problem. Part of it is a result of the welfare state that we've created. There's other contributing factors as well. So, you know, I guess where state investment could get involved, I actually helped start the before and after school line item in the state budget. I remember it was like early 2021. I went to a local YMCA that was utilizing this funding, and it was like such a breath of fresh air because there was kids outside playing and doing kid stuff, and it felt like 2 years since that really happened. So there's things we can do as a state, but at the end of the day, it's our people and our communities are going to have to, you know, solve some of the problems. The government's not going to be able to do it all.
So, as an educator, this is something that, again, gets near and dear, right? So I think the number one thing is we need to prioritize increasing the funding for before and after school, because that is something for our youth to do, somewhere for them to be. And what we've seen sometimes far too often in our communities is that when they don't have anything to do, they're either on their phone, they're on the video game, or they're out getting in trouble. And so we need to give our youth something to do. But we also, a second thing that needs to be done, and it's an early literacy thing, is we need a state campaign to promote parents reading to their kids more often. The number one way we increase reading scores for third graders is when kids are read to more, when they read more physical books.
I like the after-school activities. I've seen some excellent examples of that over the years. One, I had a student that he actually led a robotics club in the city of Battle Creek, and he was telling me about the great work that they're doing there. The students just have an absolute ball doing this stuff, creating these robots and going out and fighting. And then there was another organization, New Level Sports here in Battle Creek also, and I had the great fortune of working with them. And they have after-school sports activities for the people that live in the community. So these types of activities provide structure for these young people and keeps them out of trouble.
So, I want to approach two different levels on this. One is the parental involvement. We've talked about that a little bit. We need to, I almost want to say we need to market to our parents better that you need to be involved with your children's after-school activities. As a past Cub Scout leader for both of my boys, as a past baseball coach for both of my boys, and a soccer coach, I don't know anything about soccer. I was able to figure it out, but the point was, I was involved with my children in the after-school activities. That's so important. So it's the parental involvement, and that goes with the reading and the writing. The parental involvement in the classroom does need to be encouraged more. Outside of the classroom, we, I think, as a state, should give more incentives to the companies that will go into the school system and promote their training program. I'll give you an example. AIS Equipment. My son works for them now. He's worked for them since he was a senior in high school. They have a program called STEP. They joke around, they call them the STEP kids. They give these kids on-the-job training. They're paying them actually a decent wage. My son was able to start a 401k when he was 19 years old because of this company. Yeah, he was working 15 hours a week, but the development that these businesses can go in and train these kids to work specifically for their businesses. Thank you for the right question.
Sorry, with you saying red card, made me think of the World Cup going on right now, so. This is how I'm going to start it, is with our small businesses, for example. A lot of our small businesses, whether it's in Berry County, Iowa, Eaton, or even Kent County, are very involved in their communities, but some of them even want to take that next step. And one way that they can do that, for example, is starting mentorship programs with the kids within our community. And one thing that can do, for example, is teach them how to do taxes. Not many people know how to do their taxes, especially my generation. I was fortunate I was able to take that within high school. Some of these kids want to get involved in the auto industry. Well, going into a mentorship program, let's say in a local car body shop, they have the ability to even learn how to change oil or even change a tire.
Mr. Moore, I want to be clear, when you said outside of the classroom, you're specifically asking for things that don't involve education, is that correct?
I don't know.
Well, I can take it.
My assumption would be it could be in the school, but it's outside the classroom.
Gotcha, thank you. So, talking about business, I think the best thing that the state can do, the government can do, is get out of the way of business and let business invest in itself. There's a lot that can be done there to make us more competitive with Ohio and Indiana, and the reality is we're falling behind. And I think that has to happen in a huge way very soon. Next is that we can look at the income tax and really hone in on how much people are taxed in this state and allow that to be reduced significantly, if not eliminated altogether. Last, I guess, when it comes to education, something I've been harping on for quite some time is we have one of the oldest funding models in education in the entire nation. It's time that we invest in that. It's time that we start looking at a better way to invest in our kids and how we fund education instead of just throwing more dollars at a never-ending pot.
Very good. Representative Rodriguez, it's apparent we have at least one township official in the audience, and I know we had a county commissioner until just a few minutes ago. So, to the perennial issue that probably will never end, of never having enough, how will you support maintaining revenue sharing for townships?
Okay. Well, I think that is going to be quite the complex topic, right? With especially what?
That's the question.
I know, yes. So we need to look at the township and county budgets and kind of see, and work with our township officials. I think it's just that simple. I think that we tend to make issues more complicated than they do. That's kind of what government does. But really, at every level of government, we should be acting in a fiscally responsible way. We should be respecting our taxpayer dollars. We should be respecting, the hardworking people of our state, right? That we're not wasting their money. So, as long as the townships are being, fiscally conservative and not, not frivolously spending money like sometimes the state government has 2 terms ago, then I think that we should, definitely look at it and have conversations with it. But I don't have a problem, and I'm happy to support, the revenue sharing.
Yeah, I would say I voted twice in favor of the revenue sharing trust fund, which would dedicate a portion of the sales tax as a restricted fund to provide stability to revenue sharing going forward. So I think that's a good solution that's already out there that I support.
And this is one area where the current senator and I 100% agree. Let's keep that going.
Yeah, same here.
You guys said all of that, or just say yes? I thought I had to actually explain it.
So the revenue sharing has been increased in every municipality in any county that I'm aware of. The idea was to increase the county's road fund, take away from the revenue sharing. The marijuana tax is supposed to fill in to increase the road funds, and then they're telling us that we won't get that marijuana tax this year. Now they're saying we're only at, I think, 30 million, and they were expecting 70 million right now. So the marijuana tax just made the illicit marijuana growers stuff cheaper. So that obviously didn't work. I would propose that the revenue sharing be increased by the CPI every year, force the spending of the state to get minimized, let our locals get the funding that they need to support the issues that they need in their communities. Increase it by the CPI with a cap very similar to what our taxable value is.
One way to help with the revenue is to audit the whole entire state and to continue to audit every year or every other year. With that, we'll be able to track where the wasteful spending is, and we can either start reducing and giving more funding to these townships.
Thank you. My mom was a township treasurer for over 20 years. Sacrificed and served her neighbors as a township treasurer, and every year we had Christmas time was tax time. Made it interesting. We talk about local control. Local control has to extend to the finances. We want to keep funding our townships. We want them to make a decision at the very local level of what we need in each and every one of our townships.
I would definitely agree with Representative Regis on this, that we need to look at the township and county budgets, and we need to respect the people of the community's money when it comes to this. Thank you.
Very good. The next question is Senator Albert. What is your position on House Bill 5825, which is the Death with Dignity Assisted Suicide in Michigan?
I've written an op-ed on this topic. If anyone would like to set a Substack, I'd be happy to share it. That is, the death with dignity, that phrase is just such a euphemism that is such a distortion of the truth. The bill that has been put forward by Democrats in the legislature is appalling. One of the most egregious parts of it is to provide funding for local governments to deal with people who kill themselves out in public areas. It's a disservice to our state. It's the opposite of dignity. Everybody has worth, even if they are sick, even if they are dying. This issue is extremely personal for me, but everybody has been close with somebody who's been, terminally ill. I would say I'm very in opposition to that, and I've spoken quite clearly on that. Thank you.
This is a very hard topic. 10 years ago, I was in a room with my sister when her husband, who was terminally ill, passed away and kept begging them to pull the plug. And the doctors weren't allowed to. That is the most gut-wrenching thing I think you will ever see, to be in that room. This bill needs modified, but if people are in those situations and they're terminal and they're getting to that point and they're in their last hours, I think giving them that dignity probably is the best option to end their suffering if they want it. I think that would be my answer.
I'm unfamiliar with the topic. I haven't read the bill, so I'm not going to render an opinion. Thank you.
I'm opposed. I believe in life. It starts at conception and through natural death. 2001, my dad suffered a stroke at the age of 56, a year younger than me. One of my goals was to be in life and take care of myself, which I have. The hardest thing is to make someone comfortable enough to get through their natural life and to be the one to make the decision to remove life support. Extremely difficult. It was a natural death. I just can't imagine doing it purposely.
This is a heavy topic. Not in my life, but I know as well as in the community. And as being in ministry for the last 10 years and going on year number 11, a lot of people know where I stand with this, as I believe in natural death and not forcing a death known as death with dignity. Why do I not stand for it? Is because we're all created in the image of God, as we're all, life begins at conception as well as natural born death. Death with dignity makes it to where you are playing the role of God, and as a Christian, that is not our job to do.
Thank you. Again, I've been endorsed by Right to Life. I believe in the value of all human life. As someone who had me in the room, the only family member that was present, my grandfather of 89 years, need a decision made, and having to be the one responsible for that decision, I can tell you the difficulty of pulling life support. But at the same time, Senator Albert, I want to thank you publicly for your stance on life. You've been a stalwart on that topic, and it's much appreciated.
I too have been endorsed by Right to Life, and I oppose this 1000%. Every life is worth living, and that's where I stand on this legislation. Thank you.
This bill is not about simply turning off life support. This is about helping someone else end their life. This isn't about the terminal patient dying of cancer, or my grandmother dying of Alzheimer's, or my dad dying of sepsis. This is about an individual that they have decided to end their life. This is an anti-God bill. This is nothing more than legalizing assisted suicide, someone aiding someone else taking their own life. This is a sick bill. It's anti-God. There's no way I would vote for this. In fact, I would love to speak on the House floor about it.
Very good. All right, our final question from the audience is going to circle us back to a topic we've already visited, and something obviously that's very important in this county, and that's housing. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a little shout out, kudos to how well this county is actually doing relative to many of our peer counties across the state in getting homes built here. It's not easy, but through work, I'm particularly proud of the work our chamber and EDA is doing, along with partners like the Community Foundation, the various cities. I mean, you're seeing homes be built in Millville, Belton, Hastings, Nashville, I mean, all over this county. And we had an initiative several years ago to really start looking at that, and I'm very proud of the fact some of you raised the issue of local government decided to look in internally. And I think in Berry County we've done that. And so kudos to everybody. But this question raises a topic that has been raised in the public, news media, and has not been addressed yet. So, Mr. Pennock, take us home on the question of, none of you have mentioned the buy-ups of homes by venture capital companies. What do you propose to keep homes in the hands of individuals and not corporations?
Yeah, private equity companies are atrocious. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I get 3 calls a week and letters in my mailbox asking, can I buy your house for cash? No, I want to keep my house. Thank you very much. That is what's also driving up home prices, is these out-of-state individual or private equity firms who are buying up homes and then trying to resell them or rent them for double, triple the price. And that's driving up the market. And that's not good. That's overinflating. We've seen what a housing bubble did in the past. We don't need that again. So I think I'm intrigued to see and working on hopefully a bipartisan way to figure out what we can do at a state level to try and stop or at least limit private equity firms from being able to impact our communities in such a detrimental way. And so we can actually reduce the average home buying age from 40 back down to 25 like it used to be.
You know, the private equity firms purchasing individual houses, that is a problem. And I don't want to see us end up in a feudal state where we have landlords and tenants. So we need to limit that and regulate that. And how we're going to do it, I don't know yet, but it should be done at the state level.
Got a couple of different ideas. One, if any of us wanted to go to Canada and buy a vacation home, we would not be allowed to do that. You must be a resident of Canada, a legal resident of Canada, to buy a home that is not your primary home. Obviously, if you move there, that's your primary home, and you have to be a legal resident to move there. So, for starters, I would make anything that is not your principal residence, you have to be a U.S. citizen. Okay, that's going to weed a lot of them out because a lot of the private equity firms probably can't meet that criteria. The other thing is, during the foreclosure back in 2008, 2009, the foreclosure crisis, which I was very involved in real estate at that time, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when they were foreclosing on homes, they had a window of a period of time. This home is only available to people that are going to occupy the home, and you had to sign an affidavit. You were subject to felonies if you violated this rule. So I would really be for legislation that says there needs to be a window of time that the home needs to be on the market, whether it's listed for sale with a realtor or for sale by owner, that only principal residence ownership could be possible.
One of the biggest things that we have to do, because I can testify, my generation wants to buy, we don't want to rent. As I mentioned before, I had to work 80 hours a week for 6.5 weeks just to afford a down payment on my house. Am I proud about that? Yeah. One of the biggest issues that we have is big corporate America, like what the Biden administration and even the Whitmer administration wants to have within the state of Michigan. big corp wants to come in and have investors come in, buy these properties and rent them out entirely, or even make us homeowners sell our homes. It's time that we take an end to big corporate America and make sure that we can bring homeownership back to Michigan.
Well, I was going to advocate for local control, so yes, if we have to do it at the state level, we have to do it at the state level, but it sure would be nice to empower our townships and our counties to put a ban and a stop to corporate control and the corporate purchases of houses. Thank you.
I'm going to stand with President Trump and his executive order by restricting housing programs purchases from single-family homes by large industrial investors. Let's bring that to Michigan, and as your next state representative, I'll do just that.
Regarding the corporations, guardrails, maybe, restrictions, sure. But is it really the business of the government to dictate who you sell your home to?
I worked as an investor in the state pension fund before I was in the legislature. I guess I would start with this. Did you guys know that the state pension fund invests in companies that buy homes like this? I'll put it this way. I've known this for 10 years. The question I ask when legislation comes up is, how are we going to solve this problem? Is prohibiting venture capital from buying housing, is that going to make housing more affordable in the state? They own less than 1% of housing nationwide. So if you were to put a prohibition on that, is that going to solve the problem? Absolutely not. This is a clickbait issue. It's not going to move the needle. And one thing to keep in mind is these types of private equity firms, they have to sell their assets at the end of a 10 or 15-year period because funds, like the institutional investors like the state of Michigan, the pension fund, invest in these. There's a time limit for these funds. They need to liquidate at the end of this time period. So the idea that they're going to keep a large percentage of the Michigan housing stock for an indefinite period of time is just not a reality. This is not a solution that is going to move the needle and make housing more affordable.
Well done, everyone. 2 minutes to spare. So, I was sitting here listening to all of you, and it got me thinking. You talked a little bit at the opening about why we did this. And the ability to choose who represents us at the federal, state, and local level is probably one of the most important and foundational rights we have and responsibilities that we have as Americans. And unfortunately, too many of our fellow citizens are checking out in this responsibility because of the vitriol. In many cases, I don't like all the nastiness that's going on. Not that nastiness hasn't been in politics since the beginning, but all the social media vitriol that's being exposed and shot back and forth by both parties at all levels has really got a lot of people to just say, enough, I'm out. And we can't, as a society, afford that. So I just want to ask, wasn't it nice to finally come to a place where we all came together, not everybody in this room is a Republican or Democrat, but to be here and listen to a group of Democrats and Republicans talk respectfully and professionally about very important topics that are important to you and certainly important to us as an organization. And they did it without chewing each other up. So I want to thank all of you for being respectful of each other, for being respectful of the audience, and for the audience for being respectful of our guests. Some of these folks are going to represent us, and you've done yourself proud tonight. So let's give them all a big round of applause. Something tonight that helps you make a more informed decision. And before we depart and continue on with our evening, I want to make sure I give a special shout out to Nicole Light for her tremendous work. This takes a lot of organization. Trust me, I know. So she and her team at the chamber, the entire chamber team, Jennifer, Alicia, Kim, Emily, and Dale for their work. And we have a new member. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Riley.
What?
Riley.
Riley. Yes, I knew it's perfect, but I just met today. So thank you all for a job well done. And, they do a great job every day of providing this community, this county, with the best quality services and support to our members in the community. So with that, thank you all. and please enjoy the rest of your day.